if I have 2 hours in a day of free time to think about stuff, I personally would rather think about making money than thinking about saving money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if you spend your time focused on saving money, that's where you will get your result. If you focus your time making money, that's where you'll get your result. And for me, saving money is a puddle, relatively speaking. Making money is the freaking ocean because it is unlimited.
Most people think saving money is the answer. But the truth is, saving only gets you to zero. Join Mike and Zach as they flip the script from saving to earning, from zero to unlimited potential. Welcome to Save to Zero.
Hey, everybody. Here is episode number 1 of the Save to Zero podcast. So I'm going to interview my partner, Zach, today so that you can get a little feel about him as an individual, kind of what the podcast is going to be all about, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So here we go. Zach, how you doing?
Good, Mike. How are you? This is exciting.
Yeah, isn't this cool? First podcast episode of what's going to be like 2 million.
Yes.
If we live that long. So tell me a little bit. What's this podcast going to be about? Tell everybody.
So the premise of this podcast, given the name Save to Zero, is that if you try to save money, if you try to clip coupons, if you try to find the cheapest gas and so on, you can only save to zero. If your household budget is 10 grand a month, for example, the lowest you're going to get that is to zero. And that's if you do nothing. But if you invest in yourself, if you learn new skills, if you start a business, whatever, the amount of money that you can earn, that you can invest, all of that is infinite. So we think it's a lot better, a lot smarter to focus on investing in yourself, getting new skills, rather than trying to save money, clip coupons, and get to zero.
Yeah, but tell me how that makes sense, because you've got all these famous podcasters, famous individuals who are on different network television stations and so on, and they're all about teaching people how to put money safely in a CD and how to save money on a flight in economy and save $50 here and there. What is this?
Yeah, teaching people to save money, I think, is pretty easy because you can always cut corners. You can always take a cheaper flight and all that. And I think it's hard to invest in yourself. It's scary to invest in yourself and take some risks and learn new skills and whatever. And I think that that's a lot harder for people to talk about.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's go back in time. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, the type of household that you grew up in.
Sure. So I grew up in New Hampshire. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a firefighter. We were solidly middle class. Didn't grow up with money, though. We went on a couple vacations a year. My parents were very much in the saving mindset, trying to, learn how to get out of debt, stay out of debt, save money, save for retirement, all of that. They're not business people. They weren't risk takers. And that's what I grew up with, attitude money-wise.
So you didn't grow up with money. I get it. What is it that changed your attitude about money? I know I had a couple of things that have gone on, but tell me what changed your attitude about making money versus saving money.
So I had a couple uncles that were both business owners, and it was always really interesting being around them at like family parties and whatnot, of seeing, their attitude towards money and towards their business, towards work, how they lived. They always seemed to have a lot more free time on their hands, and that always planted the seed in my mind for, okay, maybe being a business owner, I know it's a lot of work, I know it's hard, but is probably worth it in life. So, once I went into college and I was always interested in doing it, I ended up doing a minor in business and then getting my MBA because I didn't know what kind of business I wanted to do, but I figured that, getting some business skills and some finance skills probably couldn't hurt.
So tell me a belief that you had as a kid growing up and that you were taught that you had to completely unlearn.
I think the biggest thing was just being really, really careful with money and not taking too many risks with it. And for example, when I started my private lending business 5 years ago, that was a big risk for me. I had to spend money on, an attorney and all this stuff to get things set up. And it was spending a lot of money before I saw any sort of return at all. And that's something that I never would have done given the previous attitude that I had about money.
So you had to invest some money in yourself that you didn't get an
That's
immediate
right.
return on.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, that's a
it was
little
scary
scary.
at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is, and I find this, and I heard this not too long ago, you can buy houses, you can buy cars, you can do so many different things, and you could have a lawsuit, you could have an accident, you could have bad insurance, and it can all be taken from you. But if you have knowledge, you can always keep using that knowledge over and over again, and nobody can take it from you.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly. That can never be taken away from you.
So, were you always entrepreneurial? I know you talked about you have family members that had some businesses. Were you always entrepreneurial? Is this a bug that you had in the back of your head to grow beyond the W-2? Or is this something that came about just recently, something that was an epiphany for you in the last 5 years when you started the business?
So short answer is no, I was not always entrepreneurial. I always had it sort of in my mind that being a business owner would be something that would be cool to be, but never to the point of taking any action at all. And it really came to the point where we were, working from home during the pandemic in my career as a software engineer, and I just needed something else to do. And I figured that, I have a finance background. I know a little bit about real estate investing, and then kind of fell into private lending and thought that this might be something that I actually could make work.
So it was a pandemic that brought you over to the dark side.
It was, yeah. Yeah.
Can you remember the first dollar that you ever made out of a traditional W-2 job?
The first dollar I ever made was when I did a little bit of stock trading in my freshman year of college. That was what I thought I was going to do because everybody, day trading and all of that is sexy. So I think I started doing it with like $1,000 or something like that and did it for like a month. And I didn't end up losing it all. I ended up just putting it on into some stock and just holding it. I don't even remember what it was at the point, but I tried to do day trading. And then the more I researched about it, the more I realized that it doesn't work long term.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear people talk about day trading, and I got to step back. And what I like to do is see someone who's successful at something and kind of copy what they did or what they're doing. And I think to myself, if Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio aren't day trading, I'm not going to day trade.
Exactly.
If they're smart as they are, if they can't figure it, I sure as hell can't.
I think people are attracted to it because, you can do it from anywhere. You're on a computer. All you do is do a couple clicks and you make all this money. And that's not what it's turned out to be.
So can you remember back to a rock bottom moment in your finances or your financial situation and how that shifted you to wanting to make money and invest versus saving money and not investing and a W-2?
I don't think I really had a rock bottom moment financial wise where I was like broke or anything, but I think I realized back right around the time where I wanted to get into private lending that just working a W-2 job where you got your paycheck every 2 weeks and your salary was set by the company and you could work hard. And if it was a good year, you'd get a raise. If it wasn't a good year, you wouldn't. That just kind of lost its appeal to me, that I realized that I didn't have any control over what my future was. And a lot of people think, if you work a career job and you have a steady salary, that's pretty safe. But I think it's kind of the opposite, where if you're relying on somebody else for your income, that's a little bit more dangerous in my mind. So that's kind of what shifted caused me to switch gears and really want to start a business.
So then the rock bottom moment wasn't necessarily that you were at a loss financially, but you had hit a wall or accepted the reality that I don't want to rely on somebody else because they're in control of what my future is. I want to be in control. Did I articulate that?
Exactly. Yeah. I want to be in control of my own future, my own path.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you're around people with money, What is it that you find that they do differently or they think differently than you used to before you started investing and focusing on growing money versus saving money?
I think one of the biggest things and one of the reasons that prompted us to start this podcast is a lot of middle class people don't talk about money. It's some taboo topic for some reason. And what I've noticed about being around more people that are wealthy and are business owners is they talk about money all the time. And to be clear, they're not bragging about how much money they made and talking about how they make more money than somebody else. They just understand the power of money. They understand how money is a tool and what it can do for people, and they talk about the different deals they do and how they structure things. And I think that not being afraid to talk about money is a huge barrier to break that is very helpful.
So let me ask you this. Have you found that your circle of people that you're around on a regular basis has changed at all since you've changed your focus on money and your thoughts about it?
Absolutely. I mean, they say you're the average of the 3 people or 5 people or whatever it is that you spend the most time with. And I think the exact number doesn't even matter. But yeah, I've noticed that some people that I used to hang around with, I don't hang around with as much anymore. Now I'm around a lot more business owners that I've met through masterminds or various other groups that have become friends. I spend a lot of time with them. And then also some of the people that have stayed around in my circle have also started talking more about money. And so I think I've kind of rubbed off on them a little bit.
So tell me a little bit, can you name 1 or 2 industries that you've made money in?
I made money in real estate. The first property they ever bought was a rental property. We lived in one of the units and rented out the other. And that went pretty well for us for a while.
House hacking. Yeah, that's very
Yes.
popular among people starting out in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Explain to me about house hacking. Break it down a little bit for people, in 30 seconds or less, people who have never done it before.
Yeah. So essentially what you do is you buy a rental property. It's probably going to have to be a 2, 3, or a 4 unit property because it qualifies as residential. And essentially you live in one of the units, you rent out the others. And depending on if you buy it right, and if it's a 4 unit, it's probably more likely to happen that essentially all of your tenants will pay your mortgage for you and you're more or less living for free.
Well, that's cool. That's clever. So can you tell me, how do you look at risk today versus how you looked at it when you started focusing on investing and making money versus saving money?
So I first started looking at risk as people most commonly think about like losing money or whatever. But I've shifted my attitude towards risk has shifted, and I see like people talk about risk in the stock market a lot. To me, risk is more about volatility, for example. So if you've got a bunch of money saved in the stock market, you might have a couple $1 million that's socked away, and might be low risk, right? It's in an index fund that tracks the entire stock market and all that. But the risk is if you need that money in a year, then the stock market's probably not the best place for it because over time, the stock market's going to go up. But in the next a year from now, we could be in a recession and that portfolio could drop by 50%. And is that when you really want to start taking money out of it? So my attitude towards risk has shifted to more towards consistency and less volatility in things that I want to invest in.
So you talked about the stock market and it going up and down, kind of like you didn't use roller coaster, but that's a term I used for the number of years that I was in the market. Can you explain to people about sequence of risk that most people are very unfamiliar with?
Sure. So what a lot of people have heard is you take a stock portfolio, say you save $1 million, just to make the math easy, that when you retire, you can withdraw 4% of that portfolio every single year. They call that the 4% rule. So out of that $1 million, you're withdrawing $40,000 every year. But what that doesn't take into account is if the year that you happen to retire is a down year in the stock market, and say it's a down year in the economy, and the next year could be down too, you're withdrawing that $40,000 and your portfolio may have shrunk from $1 million to $500,000 or $600,000. So
Wow.
You start withdrawing your portfolio really early on and you start taking a huge hit out of your principal. And then before you know it, your portfolio has really gone down and you're just a couple of years into retirement.
Oh, Well, that sure as heck would scare the heck out of me. That's interesting.
Yeah, right.
Before I got into investing, that's something I hadn't thought about. And I was in it for years in the stock market before anybody brought that up to me. And it was something that never crossed my mind.
Because the models are nice that, stock market returns on average 7 to 10% per year, whatever you want to use. You withdraw your 4%, you've got 3 to 6% left over, whatever. That all looks great. But the thing is, the market does not return that every single year.
Well, all right, explain that for me. They say it's an average of 10% per year. So let's say it goes up 10% one year, and the next year it goes down 7%. How much do I need to earn in a situation like that? And if you have different number scenarios to make it easier for people, that's fine. But how much do I need to make the second year or the third year? Because I know 13% is not going to make it.
Right. So let's use some bigger numbers and then we can make it a little bit more obvious, right? If you've got $100,000 in some stock and say it drops by 50%, now you've got $50,000.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to get back to where you started, a 50% return on your $50,000 is only going to get you $75,000. It's not going to get you back to 100. So you're going to need 100% return to get back to 100. So if you take a 50% loss, you need to double your money just to break even. So that's not as easy to do.
No, that's not easy to do at all in the stock market. That doesn't happen very often where it doubles in a year. Holy cow. All right. So tell me, we'll switch gears a little bit here. Tell me the best financial decision that you've ever made.
I think the best decision I ever made was to invest in myself and start a business because, like I talked about a little bit before, I always thought the way I grew up that you work you get a good job, you work a steady career for 30 years, and then you retire, and that's it. But like I kind of said, you're only limited to how much you can earn, and it's harder to get extra income that way. So the best financial advice I ever received was that it's worth it to invest in yourself and bet on yourself and try to learn new skills and find something else to do rather than just trying to focus on your household budget and saving money and all that.
What about people that are not interested in leaving their profession? What are some things that they can do to increase their income so that they don't have to worry about their boss deciding that they're due a raise?
I think it makes sense to get into investing, and whether that's real estate or the stock market or whatever you think that makes sense for you and what you understand, that having some diversification in what you're doing, and maybe you own some cash flowing properties or you own some stocks or whatever, that gets you some diversification. So if something happens to the economy, something happens to your job, you're not out of luck.
Are you more of a builder or an optimizer when it comes to money?
So I think the way I've started out in life was definitely more of an optimizer and looking at like what I've got coming in, what I've been dealing with, budget-wise, what's going on with our household, with our finances.
Did you have those nice little envelopes for all your money?
No, not paper envelopes, but I have used a tool online where you can kind of budget your money electronically into different categories and keep track of things.
So I'll ask, how much time did you spend on that, do you think, on average?
I think probably a few hours a month, I would say. Yeah.
So, and how many years did you do that for?
Maybe 8, 10.
Okay. So if you did, give or take 25 hours a year over a 8-year period of time, that was 200 hours that you spent moving money around in an electronic envelope.
That's right. Yep.
If you had used that same 25 hours a year or 200 hours in 8 years, do you think you could have learned a skill that would have netted you a lot more money than you're attempting to save money?
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I find for me, and I was guilty of it. I grew up without any money, and people will hear about that in episode number 2, so I'm not going to get into it. But all the time that you spend or that I spend trying to save money, I used to sit and try and get the cheapest airfare. And if it took me an extra 7 hours to fly, but I saved $100, it was worth it. And I never conceptualized, Mike, you're a dope. That time is valuable. You can earn unlimited money, But your time is finite. It's going to end at some point. Hopefully not too far in the future, but it's going to end. So
Yeah, if you waste your time, it's gone. You're never getting it back.
Yeah, you can't get time back, but you can get money back. Many people have proven that over and over again. So how has your mindset about money changed now that you're focused on investing?
I think now that if focused on investing and starting my own business, I've realized that making money is a lot easier than I thought. And that may sound a little bit flippant, that it's just easy to make money. That's not what I'm saying. Business is hard, but before it seemed more or less impossible. What are you going to do to make additional money if you're working an hour, like a salaried job or something like that? There's really not a lot you can do. But if your mind is open to investing and other things that you can do, you realize that you can make more money, and it's not as unobtainable as you might think.
So let me ask you this question. You are a software engineer by education and through your W-2 job that you had. Can a computer do two functions simultaneously, or does it do one function at a time very fast if it has one processor in it?
Does one thing at a time and switches back and forth multiple times per second.
Gotcha. So the human mind, to your knowledge, how many tasks can the human mind do at a time?
It can do one at a time.
And this is an epiphany that I had when it comes to time. This is my thought process. If I have 2 hours in a day of free time to think about stuff, I personally would rather think about making money than thinking about saving money. What about you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if you spend your time focused on saving money, that's where you will get your result. If you focus your time making money, that's where you'll get your result. And for me, saving money is a puddle. Relatively speaking, making money is the freaking ocean because it is unlimited.
And saving money is not as fun, right? Like you talked about with airfare. I mean, would you rather make another $1,000, or would you rather save $1,000 on a flight and then have to do 2 layovers and sleep in the airport and whatever else? Like what sounds more fun to you?
Oh no, I like sleeping in airports on those dirty floors or on those dirty couches or seats that people have sat on okay. So that leads into the next thing. What does Save to Zero mean to you? And what the heck is this goofy name of a podcast?
I think it means a lot like what we talked about, that the attitude in this country, unfortunately, about money is that it's not something to talk about. You save money in a CD in the bank and whatever until you retire. And then as inflation keeps going and eroding your wealth, you just hope that you can tread water. And if instead you change your mindset to earning more, investing in yourself, getting new skills, whatever that may be, it'll be a lot easier.
Okay. So tell me, who is this podcast for?
This podcast is for small business owners, white collar people, blue collar people that, own their own business and realize that they want more, and people wanting to learn different skills about money and life, whether it's, how to set up a trust to protect your house if something were to happen to you, or setting up different types of retirement accounts, maybe a self-directed IRA to purchase some real estate and take your money out of the stock market. Basically, anybody that wants to learn more about money and about personal finance and investing in yourself that a lot of people don't talk about.
So let's talk about this. You talked about having money in a self-directed IRA. Many people aren't going to know what that means. Tell me what a self-directed IRA is.
Sure. So to back up a little bit, everybody's familiar with an IRA, like through Vanguard or Fidelity or whoever else, where you have tax-deferred or tax-free money that you save for retirement. You can invest that in stocks and whatnot. And then when you retire, you can withdraw from it. But a self-directed IRA, it's an IRA, it has the same tax treatment, but you open it with a custodian that allows self-directed investments, which perfectly legal through the IRS. Your IRA can actually own anything except for certain small business stock, life insurance, or certain collectibles like paintings or things like that. So you can take your IRA and you can lend it to people. You can buy real estate. You can buy certain like gold coins and gold bars and whatnot. So there's just a lot more investments out there that the big Wall Street investment houses, quite frankly, don't want you to know about because they don't make any money on it when you do it.
Ah, so they got to make money on it or they're not going to tell you about it.
Exactly.
No. So what's a popular money myth that you are sick and tired of hearing about? I know there are a lot out there.
Yeah, to pick one, I'm sick and tired of hearing that if you need to keep cash on hand and whatever, that putting it in a CD is actually an investment. So say you're putting a CD, you put your money in a CD and it earns maybe 3 or 4%, whatever. But inflation is 3, 4, 5%. And after the couple years that your CD is there, you think you've made money, you've made 4% a year, you've paid tax on 4% a year. But because of inflation, the amount of goods that you can actually buy has gone down. So people think that, they're investing money when they save it in a CD, when they save it in the bank, and they're not. And I'm not saying that a CD is a bad idea. You do need to keep some cash on hand for emergencies, but don't view it as an investment because it's not.
Why do you think most people get stuck trying to save their way to freedom financially?
I think people get stuck because you reach a floor, right? There's only so much that you can do if you're trying to, for example, cut your grocery budget down, right? Do you want to start eating cheap processed foods at the expense of your health? And probably not. So there's only so much. Yeah, right. There's only so much you can save there. Do you not want to go on a vacation for the next 12 years just so you can save a little bit more money? I mean, your property taxes are going to go up every year. Your homeowner's insurance is going to go up every year. So it's a hamster wheel. And I think that's where people get stuck.
Gotcha. Okay. So how should people think differently if they want to build some wealth?
They need to think, like we've been talking about, that trying to cut out your grocery budget and all that is not really going to work. Think about what your money is invested in. Look at you probably have a retirement account through your job. Look at what that's in. Is that invested in bonds that are paying you a couple percent a year, or is it in a total stock market fund? Do you have some real estate? A lot of people take their retirement account and they just put it on autopilot and they don't want to look at it. They're overwhelmed by it. Maybe they're afraid to look at it. And just putting your head in the sand and not thinking about that until it's too late is not going to help you.
So what are some of the topics that you want to cover in these podcasts that people won't hear from their accountant or their financial advisor?
So I want to talk about all the things that we think that your average American should know about money and investing that they don't. So I think we need to talk about how you can put your house in a trust if you want to protect that, how you can do different strategies with your IRA. Everybody's familiar with, IRA rollovers and things like that, but we can talk about those in more detail. We can talk about self-directed IRAs in more depth, like we've touched on. We can have some experts in IRAs come on there. We can have accountants come on and talk about various tax strategies people can use. And what we want to do is just open people's eyes to what's possible money-wise and what they may not know.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm excited about is teaching people that there are many different ways to invest. You don't just have to be in a bank, in a stock market, or a bond. There are so many different options out there that it gives people many different choices based on what their situation is. What do you think about that? Are you looking forward to some of that?
I am. And I think what comes out of that too is that it's not that you have to pick one strategy. We're not at all suggesting that you should take all your money and put it into real estate or put it in stocks or whatever. You should probably diversify into various things, not spreading yourself too thin. But if you learn what's out there, you can pick the investment strategies that make the most sense for you.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I heard years ago is that wealthy people do not have just one source of income. They have multiple sources of income. And one of the things that I had explained to me as an analogy one time is that with an engine, it can't fire all 8 cylinders at the same time. It has to fire 4 and 4. And the reason for that is if they all fire at the same time, the engine explodes. So it's the same thing with investing. everything is not going to be at the top at the same time. Something's up, something's down, but you're always bringing in income because you have different sources of income. So is that something that you started to think of when you diversified away from when you had a W-2 job in the way that you invest now?
Yes, absolutely. It helped me sleep at night the most, as I realized that if I had one investment that was doing well and then all of a sudden it wasn't doing as well, I had something else that could take its place. And that made it a lot easier when you have all these different streams of income that you don't have to be as worried.
Explain a little bit about what your personal investment strategy is today and how it has evolved over time.
So for me, I'm really focused on things that do not require a lot of my time and do not add a lot of stress. And
you want to make money while you're sleeping.
Exactly. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to make money while I'm sleeping, and I want to have investments that don't bother me on a weekend, for example, right? Like I used to own that rental property that I talked about, and once in a while, you'd get calls about something wasn't working, something was leaking, this and that, whatever. But then when you diversify into, say you own real estate passively investing with somebody else, or you do private lending or whatever. In private lending, if you have insurance on the property, if it burns down, you don't need to be worried about it until Monday when the insurance company calls you and asks where you want them to send the check. And so for me, it's just about things that don't stress me out and don't require a lot of my time.
So do you see the podcast being tactical, motivational, real life stories, focused on one area over the other? Do you see a combination? What do you want to see happen?
I want it to be a combination of all these things. Definitely some tactical advice if we want to talk about a specific subject, but then also more strategic things of like, how to think about money and maybe some strategies that people hadn't had in mind. And then people tell their own personal stories about how they became an entrepreneur. Nobody's born with their own business on day one. Everybody, figures out their own path. And every time you hear a story like that about somebody, you can always pick up some advice along the way for what they learned, what worked for them, and what didn't work for them. So I think talking all those different things is going to be exactly what people can expect.
So here's a big one. What do you not expect this podcast to be?
This podcast is not going to be a deep dive into any one thing over multiple episodes. For example, Mike and I are private lenders. This is not a podcast about private lending. We're not going to be talking about how we do loans and all of that because, quite frankly, there's not a whole lot that we can talk about for an entire podcast and make it very interesting. Lending is boring. We want to get other guests on with all the other things that we've been talking about.
What's one reason you think that we're going to be a good duo on this podcast?
I think we have different backgrounds, different experiences. You've owned multiple businesses throughout your life, and to my knowledge, have never had a corporate job. And for me, I have had a corporate job and have had to think about how to break away from that. And that's been a big mindset shift. So I think this will be an exciting combination for doing this.
Do you have any controversial money opinions you'd like to share right out of the gate?
Yeah, I think the most controversial money opinion I have is that I actually don't disagree with a lot of the stuff that Dave Ramsey says. I think that he is, for lack of a better term...
Excuse me, everybody. He's swearing at me now.
It's sort of like AA for personal finance. And what I mean by that is anybody that really understands what they're doing knows that how he suggests paying off your debts from smallest to largest is not the mathematically optimal thing to do. And I completely agree with that. That's true. But who he's talking to are the people that are drowning in debt. They have all these bills, stuff is in collections. And for them, if they have a $200 store credit card bill that they haven't been paying, if they pay that off, that gives them a huge psychological boost that this is actually something that they can do. And it makes it a lot easier to keep momentum going. It's just like if you're going to go from sitting on the couch to running a marathon, you're not going to go run a marathon tomorrow. You're going to start walking down to the mailbox and back, depending on where you are in life. And I think his advice is the exact same thing.
What's one episode topic that you're dying to record?
I'm really looking forward to having an expert in self-directed IRAs on. When I set myself up with one 5 years ago, I realized how powerful they were and how they were completely broke the mold of what I thought I could save for retirement on. And since then, I've helped my mom set one up. I've helped my aunt and my uncle set one up. I've helped various people in our investor community set them up. And I think that is probably the single most powerful tool that people can use to take control of their own retirement. And I really want to spread that news to people.
Awesome. All right. Now, I wrote down about a half a dozen rapid fire questions. So you have to answer them in 2 seconds or less. All right. I'm just kidding. It doesn't have to be 2 seconds or less, but I am going to rapid fire you. Okay. So let me get out my list so I don't forget anything and I don't throw off the timing. What's the worst money advice you've ever received?
The worst money.
Next question. All right. Sorry, guys. Let's do this again. I just want to have a little fun. What's the worst money advice you've ever received?
The worst money advice that I've ever received is that you can keep money in a savings account and get ahead.
Ah, good one. I love that. What's one book or podcast that changed how you think?
People say this all the time, but I think it's for a good reason. The first book that I read that really changed my mindset here was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Talked about the contrast between a business owner and an employee and really set the stage for me and how I think about money now.
Absolutely a classic. I can't name 5 people that I know that are wealthy that aren't familiar with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, haven't read it. So I'm with you, man. So what's your guilty pleasure purchase? What do you have in your head that you want to purchase that you know you don't really have to, but it's going to be guilty pleasure and that you're going to purchase?
So I live on about 40 acres up in New Hampshire. And what I really want to get is a big excavator so that I can put trails and fields and all kinds of stuff on my property. And that's probably something that costs a couple $100,000.
Dude, I want to party with you. Who the heck says excavator? That's cool. I love it. So if you got $100,000 in passive income today, what would you do with it?
I would take a good chunk of it, and go on a few-week vacation with my wife. No phone, and just relax, enjoy myself, unplug. And then I would take the rest of that, assuming there's some left over, and reinvest it.
Nice vacation for $100,000. Good for you. What's one thing you wish you knew at 21 that you know now?
I wish I knew that if I actually in business and everything and sat down and really focused and wasn't so nervous about jumping in, I wish I knew how much further ahead I would be than I was now. I feel like thinking back on myself that I wasted a lot of time, and I hate comparing myself to other business owners, but sometimes you see people start a business in just a couple of years and get really far. And if I could go back and change it, that's what I would do.
Yeah, but I got to tell you though, for me, I get down that rabbit hole too. And what I have to say to myself is, I have yet to meet somebody who was successful at anything that didn't say the exact same thing.
That's true.
Because
yes.
It's easy. Steve Jobs said this. It's easy to look back and see the picture, but when you have the pieces in front of you, you can't see the picture until they're all together. And the only way to see them all together is to look back.
Exactly. It's exactly right.
In one sentence, what does financial freedom mean to you?
Financial freedom for me is the time to do what I want with who I want and where I want.
Boom. All right, man. That is it. We are done with episode number 1, everybody. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what we got coming your way, and we think you're going to learn from it. We know we're going to have some people on here. You're going to learn some stuff, some gold nuggets that you can take action on. But remember, knowledge is nice. It doesn't mean anything without action. So, till the next episode, have a good one. Zach, sign off, buddy.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we're looking forward to what we've got coming up.
Boom.